Hi, my name is Skye, and I'm so excited because I got to help put together the Flux Kit that got sent out this month. And this Flux Kit is all about just the incredible resources and inspiration that we have in terms of art materials that we can find in nature and ways that we can be inspired by natural objects and just the things around us. So maybe I'll start by going through the Flux Kit, and um, it's pretty exciting. So one of the first things you might notice is this feather, this beautiful feather. And we got a lot of comments that this kind of reminds people of Harry Potter. And uh, this is actually, you can use this as a quill pen if you want to, and you can play around with trimming the nib. And one of the cool things is that in this kit, you actually can make your own ink. So we'll get into that as well. So when you open the kit, what you will see is you'll be presented with all of these really cool bags. And each of the bags, so there's 7 bags, and what you'll see is they each have a word on them. And each of those words is some element of art and design. So this is kind of fun because this kit is kind of like 7 kits in one. So you can open up each of these bags and they'll have different materials, different prompts and ideas for things that you can do. So for instance, if this is the bag that says line, so if we open this up, there's a card and there's a glass bottle that's super cute. There's a bag of charcoal, which is very dusty, so that's a good thing to know. And there's a bag of this mystery white powder, which is actually, it's a special substance from a tree, and it's called guar gum. And so if you actually look at the card, what you'll have, this card is very dusty from the charcoal. It will tell you about ink and how we've used ink throughout history to make lines. And that's why this bag says line on it, because that's one of the elements of art. And so this actually includes instructions to use the things in this kit and actually mix your own ink. And then once you've mixed your ink, you can play around with it. You can use it with a quill pen. You can use it with a brush, and you can even use it with this stir stick skewer and just experiment with different types of line and see what you can get from the ink that you make. So if you wanted to make your own ink, we have these beautiful little bottles that also seem like they're out of Harry Potter or something like that. And we have this black powder, which is charcoal powder. So you might have used charcoal before if you are drawing, and this is another use for it, so you can make ink with it. So what we want to do is take the charcoal, and you can do this over a plate or something because it can get a little messy. So we just want to actually put the charcoal into this little jar. And so I'm just putting about half a spoon of charcoal. So we're just going to put the charcoal into our little jar. And you can also do this in a bigger jar and then pour your charcoal into the jar after, if that's easier. Sorry, pour your ink into the jar. Okay, so we've got about half a spoon of charcoal in there. And now I'm just going to add the water, which is the other very important part of our ink. And I'm going to put the cap on, and then I'm going to gently shake. So I'm shaking to make sure that it gets all nicely mixed in together. And so what we have is a black liquid. It's almost ink. But we want to do one more thing. We're going to do one more thing. So we're going to add a little pinch of this white powder to the ink. And what this is going to do is it's going to act as a binder. So what that means is it's going to help the charcoal powder and the water to mix together and to stay together as one substance. That's our new ink. So this will give our ink some nice qualities so that it flows nicely and works well on paper. So now comes the hardest part, which is getting the cork out of the bottle again. No, just kidding. So I'm just going to take a pinch of powder and drop it in there and put the cork back on and shake it up. And so we want to mix that powder in really well. And at the end of it, we have our ink. And so once you're done making your ink, you can keep it in the fridge and it will last a little bit longer. And don't forget to label it so that everybody knows that you made this ink. So if you want to test out your new ink, you can try it with your feather. You can try it with the tools, the stuff that is in the kit for form. So let's see what happens if we dip this pen in. So you can play around with your quill, see what kind of marks it's possible to make. So, and the cool thing about these quill pens is you can actually adjust the tip of the quill. So you can cut it at different angles, and depending on what angle you have, you're going to get different lines out of your quill. So that's a lot of fun. And we've also got in the form bag, so the one that's all about form, there's some ideas for pulling together, just pulling out that bag. So, you know, there's a few different things in here that you could actually put together and then play around with. So what kind of form can we make with these feathers? So that, you know, it has this kind of strange multiple tips. And so what happens if I pour some ink out onto the paper and then drag this through it? I don't know what's going to happen. So let's find out. So it's kind of fun, actually. And it feels really cool. I've never painted with the tip of a feather like this before. And yeah, I recommend trying this. It's a lot of fun. And see, so this is a different form of tool than a regular paintbrush, and it's giving us different effects. So yeah, have fun with that. So another one we have in here is pattern, which is one of my personal favorites. I love patterns. And so this is really about starting to think about how you might see patterns in nature and how they show up in the world around us. And there's so many ways that that can happen. And so what you'll also see in your kit is this really cool piece of black fabric. And this is designed, so there's a couple different ways you can use this. So one way is you can hold it out of a window when it's snowing, or you can go outside when it's snowing and catch snow on this. Or if you prefer, you can put some salt crystals on there or some sugar crystals, or really anything that you want to kind of look at closely. And then there's this neat little magnifying glass in your kit, and you can actually look up close at those materials and see what kinds of patterns you can find. So it's really about finding patterns all around you. And so you could basically use anything, any kind of natural materials, and just look closely at them for those patterns for that one. The other thing that's in the pattern kit is a really cool, so everyone's going to have a little piece of a plant, and you can actually use that and do a plant rubbing. So what you would do is take it out of the bag and put it down, put a piece of paper over it, and then color over it. And that will reveal the pattern in the plant. And so you can play around with that with different colors, different patterns, and make your own art. And so also included in the kit is this little box of crayons. And so these work really great for doing the crayon rubbings. And one kind of tip you could do is take the crayon out and actually take this paper right off. And that way you can use the side of the crayon to do the rubbing. So one of the things you'll notice if you look at plants around you is they have a lot of really cool patterns. So one of the things that we've included in the kits, and there's a lot of different little pieces of plants. So there will be a little piece of a plant in there. And what you can do with this is do a plant rubbing. So if you put this down and then on top of it, put a thin sheet of paper. And then in that same kit, you'll have crayon. So what you can do is actually peel the label off of the crayon. So there's a paper label. You can just peel that off with your fingers. And they usually come off. Yeah, it's not too hard. Let me see. Peel it off like that. What we've got here is our beautiful plant pattern. And then I'm going to put a piece of paper on top of it. And just using the side of the crayon, I'm going to do a rubbing. And so this is really cool because you can actually start to see the form and the pattern of that plant coming through. And if you want, you can kind of go in with your crayon in certain areas and kind of color over to get some more detail out of certain areas. And so this was actually back in the day a way that people used to study plants. So they would do this rubbing and it would help them to understand the structure of some of these natural elements. So what's cool about this is you can actually do a bunch of rubbings on one piece of paper. And so you can actually create repeated patterns and textures. And then if you want, you can even switch colors and use a different color of crayon. So there's a few colors in this pack. So let's say I wanted to do some green on here. I could just move it over and do that green. So there's lots of options if you want to play around with the rubbings. So for the bag that is marked color, what you'll find inside is this super cool blank marker and a pair of gloves and this stuff, which is actually the dried hull of a walnut. So it's not the shell of the walnut, it's not the inside of the shell, but it's the fruit part that goes outside of the shell. And when it's on the tree, it's green, but when it's dried, it turns this nice dark brown. And this has a really cool pigment in it. So if you want, you can put on gloves because this pigment can stain your hands and it also can dry out your fingers. So it's a nice idea to wear gloves. And when you open your marker and you take off the lid, what you'll see is there's a little white nib on the inside of the marker. And so that nib is what we're going to actually remove. So I'm actually just pulling it apart. Sometimes I use my teeth if I have trouble. So I'm just pulling that out and setting it down. And then you can just fill up your marker with these little pieces of walnut. So you can just push them right into the marker. And if they have trouble going in, you can just break them apart. You can kind of smash them into smaller pieces if you want to, and then just push them into there. And so you're going to put all the little pieces of walnut into this empty marker and then fill the marker up with water. And once you've done that, you can put the nib back in and you can put the cap back on and give it a good shake. And this one takes some time. So if you let it sit for a couple of days, so I would say at least 4 days, maybe up to a week, and you just shake it once a day. And what you will see is that that clear water will slowly turn to be a darker color. It will turn brown and it'll make a really cool brown ink. And the other thing that you'll find in this kit is a little capsule that is an iron pill. So also what you will notice in your kit is this little capsule. And what that is actually, it's just iron supplements. So the kind of iron supplement you can get in a drugstore. But what's really interesting is if we add this iron, So if we open up that capsule and add just a little pinch of iron to our brown walnut-based ink, it will turn the ink black. So it's a really cool reaction to watch, and you can play around with it. So you can either add it to your marker, or you can color with the ink and then kind of sprinkle some on and see what happens. So just a fun way to experiment, and it's a cool effect that you can play around with. So this bag says space, and so what we're talking about in terms of space is thinking about like space in a composition on the page. So so this wall behind me is negative space, and where I am is positive space. So there's an example of that. If you know MC Escher, the artist, he does really cool designs, and so his art has some great examples of negative and positive space to help you think about how you might do that in your own art. And there's also a cool video that you can watch that animates one of his drawings, or it's a print actually. Yeah, so there's a cool video you can watch that animates some of his artwork. And there's also an idea on the back, which is that you can explore negative and positive space by drawing a tree. So if you think about trees in the winter, not so much like a pine tree, but more of like a maple tree or something like that, you can draw all of the branches and then pay attention not just to the branches and drawing the branches, but also the space between the branches. That's the negative space. And the idea here is you can play around with that negative space. You can fill it with color, you can use your imagination, and you can even you can draw creatures in there, you can draw all kinds of patterns and designs, and just to kind of be more aware of that negative and positive space. And then, so this bag is all about form. So thinking about form, that's kind of like, what space does something take up in the world? So form is kind of like 3D, and like a ball is a sphere, or a tower, an office tower is like a big rectangular form. So we sometimes think about form in terms of like, okay, I'm going to draw a ball and that's the form, or I'm going to like have different forms in my artwork. But we decided to take a different approach for this one and get you thinking about, in terms of form, what is the effect of having different forms in your tools? If you have different forms in your tools, what effect does that have on your art? So this is kind of cool. So this is where you get to be creative and play around with making your own tool. So let's say we're making our own paintbrush or tool in that way. So we can combine these materials in different ways and then see what effects those forms have on our line. So that's a fun one. It's very creative, and it's just thinking about form. And then we also have value. So you can see there's a value. So on this card, there's a value scale, and it's really thinking about black as one value, white as one value, and then all of the range of grays that are in between those two values. And that's actually, you can do a lot with just black, white, and gray. And so it's kind of a challenge to say, what can you draw just using those without using any other colors? And to do that, we've also included this really, really special charcoal. So this is really cool because most charcoal that you might get is pressed. So it's so it's from wood. The wood is kind of cooked till it turns black and is kind of like burned. And then it's powdered and pressed into those sticks that you might have seen before, might have used before. But this is actually made from a piece of willow. And so it's actually the original shape of the plant that you can see in this stick. And so it has a little bit of like a curve in it, and it's just really cool. So you could actually make this yourself if you had a fire and a tin, but we won't get into that. So yeah, enjoy the vine charcoal. And next up we have, this is one of my favorites. So this bag is texture. And This is kind of a fun one because you get to play a game with it, and I like games. So this is just thinking about texture. So there's a drawing on here, and it's kind of to represent when we look at the texture of things, it helps us to imagine what might it feel like to touch something. And so you can have texture of a fabric. You can have ice has a smooth texture. There's all kinds of textures in the world. And what we have in here is a game for you to play. So this is a little bag. So don't look inside. The idea is that you just reach inside and feel around. And there's different objects in here. They're all natural objects. There's nothing gross, so don't worry about that. And they're all kind of, they have different textures. So the idea is to feel the textures and guess, what do you think is in this bag? And then you can open it up and see what's in there. And the other thing that you can do with this is, as you're feeling those textures, think about how you might draw those textures without even looking at what's in the bag. How would you represent those textures? And so once you're done with this texture game, you can even play it again, because you can give this to someone else and say, hey, can you refill this bag with natural textures and give it back to me? And then you can be surprised all over again. That's it. Oh yeah, paper. Okay. And so what you'll see also in the kit is that there's lots of paper. So this is for all of the different activities that you'll do when you are going through the different bags. So if it's a drawing activity, you can use this paper, or if you want to test out the ink you made, anything like that, that's what the paper here is for. And some of the papers are sort of thicker, and those will be better for the watercolor. Some of them are a little bit thinner, and that one's probably better for doing the plant rubbing, because the texture will come through the paper a little bit better that way. Really, this kit was a lot of fun to put together, and I hope that as you're playing around with it, you feel inspired. That's the whole point of it, is to have fun, to be inspired by the materials and the ideas in here, and to make your own art. So hope you enjoy it.